Greetings, this is Professor Laird, and this is a short video on peer-reviewed academic journals for all of my social science classes. We'll be looking at the importance of peer-reviewed journals and how to find them on the library databases. So peer-reviewed journals, this is where the scientific studies are published. Very important to understanding that particular topic that's being studied. So this is where the scientists and the scholars and the academics and researchers, this is where they've been studying and researching a topic for, in some cases, perhaps even decades. And they compile their information, and when they get their study all together, they would then submit it to a journal, a peer-reviewed journal. The journal would then send copies of your study out to other peers for review, other scientists, other academics, other professors. These peers will then scrutinize the study as thoroughly as they can for all kinds of, whether it's looking at their data, how consistent their data is, how sound their methodology is, if there's any bias in their studies, looking for errors, corrections, accuracy, objectivity, reasoning. So they all compile their notes, provide comments on the paper, and then they send those comments back to the journal. The journal then compiles those and then gives them back to the original researcher, who will then be asked to respond to those comments, potentially revise the paper, and resubmit it. So this is an arduous and incremental process, much like the scientific method is itself. We're trying to incrementally figure out how things work and why. Part of the scientific method, which we've talked about, and this peer-reviewed process is a very important part of the scientific method to ensure maximum objectivity and consistency in researching a problem, as well as adding to the body of knowledge, continuing our understanding of our world. So there's lots of journals out there, peer-reviewed journals of all subjects, thousands and thousands of articles. And so how to find them. So what we will do first is go into the library databases on the college website. Here we go to the library page, and this is the general intro page, and then we go to the library's website. And over here to the right, we have our quick links to databases. Here you can search for lots of media that the library contains, but for our peer-reviewed journals, we want to go to the databases. So we'll click here. Now there's hundreds of databases, and what I'm going to do is focus on a couple of them that have thousands and thousands of peer-reviewed journal articles. One of them is EBSCO, which is a huge search engine for peer-reviewed articles, and JSTOR is another one. So let's go to EBSCO, and as you can see that if you're off campus, they will ask you for your username and password. If you're on campus, you don't have to deal with that. You just go straight into the databases. Now, as we see on the EBSCO, there's lots of these databases, and I'm just going to focus on Academic Search Complete, since that has so many of them. See, it says here the world's most valuable and comprehensive scholarly full-text database. So let's just go to that one, and we will find lots of articles. All right, so here's your search engine for that particular database. And the one thing that you might want to do to focus in on peer-reviewed journals is to click this button right there. That's probably the only one that you'll need to click so that it does at least narrow it down to the peer-reviewed journals. If you did not click this, it would give you a lot of other interesting articles, perhaps from legitimate news sources, such as Time and Newsweek, but we want to focus on peer-reviewed. Now let's just say we wanted to research a particular topic, such as divorce. Now if I just typed in divorce and hit search, I have over 10,000 articles. That's a lot to choose from. So what we'd want to do is narrow that down with these AND terms, and I'm just going to look at long-term effects of divorce, and then search that one, because that narrows down our topic quite a bit. As you can see, it narrowed it down to 200 articles. Now, let's look through a few of these. If the article is offered in full text, it will tell you right there. If you just click on that link, it will just give you the title page. Now here's a study from June of 2000 in the Scandinavian Journal of Psychology, long-term effects on mental health, family relations, and adult sexual behavior. Here's one, a fairly recent one, March 2018. Now this is in a study in England and Wales, effect of divorce on housing tenure. So we might want to look through these to see which one might pertain to the topic that we want to focus on, long-term effects of parenting, preventing intervention on young adults' painful feelings, rejection sensitivity, mediate long-term outcomes, a long-term study on divorce and depression. As you can see, this one does not have a full text. So what you could do is request it if you like the title, what the title page of this article tells you. You might could request it through an interlibrary loan right there, and they will find it somewhere else. Here's one on. Well, let's just look at this one right here. This one's from 2006, long-term psychosocial effects of parental divorce. A little bit more broad study, but it is from the European Archives of Psychiatry and Clinical Neuroscience. So if I click on PDF full text, that's going to give me the entire PDF file, and there's my abstract. The abstract, as I said, gives you generally what they are researching, how they're doing it, and they give you results. Now, here we can talk about what they did. See, they're looking at 32-year-olds. So this is a 16-year follow-up study. Fairly interesting. That's why these studies can take a long time, because this is a 16-year after follow-up where they're looking at 32-year-olds who had experienced divorce before age 16. And there's 317 people in this study. And we can look through here to see how they conducted the study, and then you can get a general idea of what they found right here. Females from divorced compared to non-divorced reported more psychological problems, higher scores, affect depression, things like that. Had more problems in their interpersonal relationships, and this is just one study that found this in a 16-year follow-up. So, study revealed that parental divorce is an indicator of sufficient stress in childhood for its influences to persist well into adulthood, possibly with wider scope among females. So this is an example of a study that is trying to investigate the long-term effects of divorce. And if we look back, here's one without a PDF full text. Let's go back to this one up here from June 2000. We got lots of studies here from fairly recent times here. Here's one from October 2017. Let's just look at this one from 2000. Zoom in on that just a bit. Here they're talking about specific long-term effects were examined in a sample of 179 Icelanders, 20 to 30 years of age. And results showed that compared to adults whose parents remained married, those of divorced parents reported more negative emotional experiences at the time of the study and had looser family ties. So that's another study looking at long-term effects of divorce. I'm just showing you some examples here. We also see there's a study here that how preventive intervention on young adults' feelings about divorce, what that might do, and this is a fairly recent article from 2017. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the abstract there. And you can see that this was another follow-up type study 15 years later. They're looking at a certain type of program, a New Beginnings program, and what effect that has on the effects of divorce. These findings suggest that programs designed to help families after divorce have benefits in terms of the long-term feelings about parental divorce. So even though we do have several studies that show negative long-term effects, and of course we have to keep in mind that this does not mean for every single person that's divorced, we have to take this into account, but in general, the negative effects of divorce can be mitigated somewhat with programs such as this. So this is just a very short example of how you might look up a particular topic. Here I just picked divorce and its long-term effects and found some articles. And if we go back into the database and look at JSTOR, JSTOR may give you a little bit different variety. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to do divorce and long-term effects on that one as well. I'm going to just go ahead and I'm just going to stick on the content that I can access. Here I'm going to narrow it by articles and research reports. That'll narrow it down a little bit. And then that should be good enough for now to get me a good initial search for divorce and long-term effects. And here I see an article from 1995. The older articles aren't necessarily, you don't want to necessarily exclude them because human behavior does not change that dramatically over time. So a 1995 study might have some useful information. The long-term effects of divorce on the mental health of young adults, a developmental perspective. Here's short-term decade-long effects. Here's one from 2006, 2009, children's adjustment. Let's see, effects of parental divorce on mental health throughout the life course. That one's 98. So with JSTOR, we're getting, again, a good selection, and I don't see any overlap yet, so we're getting some different articles here. So that give you let's see, effects of divorce and marital discord on adults, children's psychological well-being. That's 2001 from the American Sociological Review. So if I click on that and proceed to the PDF file, and I go to the abstract, and they're talking about how they looked at previous research, looked at 3 pathways for which family disruption and discord may affect their well-being, and what they discovered, marital discord appears to erode children's emotional bonds with mothers, whereas both divorce and marital discord appear to erode children's emotional bonds with fathers. Now, if we go back and look at another one, again, here's one looking at women's children's adjustment. 2009. Take a look at that one. All I'm doing here is kind of looking at some articles that potentially might be interesting to download, which is where you would click this button right there. You could download that, save it on your computer, and then for reading later. In this particular study, they're looking at link between divorce and children's short-term, long-term adjustment. And they come up with 4 points here, what they're examining. And this is one that they're looking at policies with respect to how they might affect children's adjustment. So this is one that you might need to read further to figure out what policies they're talking about that would assist in a child's adjustment from divorce. So this might actually be an interesting article that you could look at to put in your, perhaps your conclusion of your paper, that this is some things that have been found. So that's just a quick little overview of how to find them. So what we want to do is we go to the library databases. EBSCO and JSTOR are two huge databases. Check off the peer-reviewed box, or with JSTOR you might want to narrow it down a little bit to stick with your peer-reviewed type articles. And then we'll talk a little bit more about citing your source later, but for your peer-reviewed article, very simple in that we just want the author's name, and of course they will be, your references will be listed in alphabetical order, but the journal will have the lead author first, last name first, and then you list the rest of the authors, followed by the year that the article was published, followed by the title of the article, which you could put in quotations to bring that out, as that being the title of the article, and then most importantly, the name of the journal in italics, because I can look at this source and immediately tell that it's a peer-reviewed journal source, followed by the volume, issue, and the page numbers of that journal article. So this has been a quick overview of peer-reviewed journal articles and how to find them, and perhaps how to look through them in searching for ideas on your paper topic.